People are curious how I came to direct the award-winning documentary Orgasmic Birth that started a global movement about pleasure and intimacy in pregnancy, birth, and parenting, and led me to be a passionate activist and global leader changing childbirth. I'd love to share my story with you. I grew up in a big Italian American family. I was the oldest daughter, the oldest granddaughter, and great grandchild too. I love spending most Sundays and many holidays together with my aunts, uncles, and many cousins crowded around my great grandmother's table. I can still see the flowered wallpaper and smell my grandmother's cooking. I always had a fascination with birth, and I love listening to family birth stories and received a great appreciation for the power of women's bodies to give birth. My great grandmother gave birth to 8 children at home, some in Brooklyn, Harlem, New York, and in New Jersey. And she talked of walking, moving, and challenges all being manageable and important parts of bringing life into the world. Her love and joy was palpable. Both my mother and my grandmother also had powerful birth stories too, each unique, that guided me to what I wanted in birth one day. Fast forward, I moved to Montreal to attend McGill University, where in my final year, I married and prepared to give birth. I was shocked to learn how the medical model had taken over and stripped the joy and the love that I'd seen and heard in my family's stories away. Canada, through a series of legislation similar to the US, had regulated away its midwives, the keeper of natural birth, only to realize their mistake and thankfully return midwives, but sadly not until after my birth. I searched for a doctor who would trust me to give birth the way my ancestors had, upright, moving, trusting my own ability. Sounds simple? It was not. I interviewed so many doctors, and I finally found a young resident who had not been indoctrinated into what I call a dysfunctional maternity care model. He was perfect. We could learn together. He listened and understood all that I desired. That warm Saturday morning in August, when I arrived at the hospital in labor, he was across town in another hospital. So the idea that I would have typical care at that time, hooked up to an IV in bed with only a bedpan and medication, was scary. I asked the nurse to use the toilet and locked myself in the bathroom. I yelled through the door, "There are only 2 conditions I'll come out. My baby is born or my doctor arrives." Luckily, before they cut the door down, my doctor knocked at my door and said, "When they said there was a woman locked in the bathroom in labor and delivery, I knew it would be you." Together with his support, I did it. I had that moment of fear and I said, "Can I do this?" And he held my hand and looked in my eye and said, "You're doing it. You can do it." I gave birth my way, upright. I was the first upright birth in the hospital, and without an episiotomy, a cut that was often given to widen the birth canal. I said to him in pregnancy, "If you don't cut me, I won't cut you." And he got it, no cutting needed. I not only gave birth to my son that day, I became a fierce advocate for change. My birth ignited my interest to become a childbirth educator so I could help other people prepare for birth by gathering the stories that had been lost. Back in the US 2 years later, I was ready to give birth to my second baby. I found a female OB. I thought as a woman, she would honor and respect all my choices, and she sure agreed in prenatal visits. But no, on the day, she barged in labor, flips on the lights, and started hollering directions to my nurse. This was so absurd and disturbing that my labor completely stalled. She left. My husband turned out the lights, helped me to feel safe again, and my son was born 20 minutes later. My husband and I were alone in the room. I learned how sensitive we are in labor. The words, the way people make us feel, either open us to birth or close us down. For my third baby, I finally had what I'd been looking for all along, a midwife at a birth center. Lonnie trusted me and trusted birth. I could do what my body needed to do. I could move freely, take a shower, get in a tub, experience joy, pleasure, and humor amidst the challenge. This is what I had heard in my great grandmother's story, being surrounded by other women in a safe space to listen to my body, move, and have, yes, an ecstatic, orgasmic birth. My son needed a little help getting started, and my midwife encouraged me to hold him and talk to him. She was there to do more if he'd been in any danger, but instead, she helped me to help him, instead, giving me a feeling of confidence rather than taking him away from me, separating us both when we needed each other most. I learned so much from each birth. I saw firsthand how much we've lost since my great grandmother's time and how we're just beginning to learn that less is more in birth. Yes, the medical model saves lives when it's needed, but the overuse and insensitive rush care is putting people at risk emotionally and physically. There are so many simple ways that midwives have used to support birth that keep birth safe for mothers and babies. As I was growing with each birth, I became more passionate about helping others to have the birth they desire. I became a childbirth educator after my first birth, a doula attending births and offering physical and emotional comfort and support after my second birth. And one night after my third birth, when I was asleep, I had a dream of making a documentary. Yes, I was literally sound asleep, and I had the most vivid dream of making orgasmic birth. I was not a filmmaker. I didn't know anything about making a film, but I saw myself in the dream make a film all about the best kept secrets that I knew were hidden in plain view about birth as sacred, sexual, emotional, and intimate. I remember waking my husband at 2 a.m. and saying, I have to make a film about birth. Jimmy laughed and said, go back to sleep and have another dream. But when I woke in the morning, it was so powerful. I just knew I had to do it. It was time for the world to see the power and pleasure of birth. I didn't even know how to make a film, but I could find the people that did. And the story of making the film is as amazing as the film has become. We'll save that one for another day. Orgasmic birth started a movement that science shows is possible for every person to have an orgasmic birth. I have so much to share, so many orgasmic birth stories showing our film around the world and the many ways it continues to change people's birth and life. But I will save those too for future podcasts so I can continue on with my story. While making the documentary Orgasmic Birth, I met many others who either with positive experiences or sadly with negative births knew there was a better way. We gathered late at night in hotel rooms, at conferences. We would stay up sharing our passion, review the emerging science that medicalized maternity care was off course. It was time to show the way to a healthy model of care. The MotherFriendly Childbirth Initiative was born. One of the people who shared our passion was midwife Mary Kroger. Her long hair, big smile, and amazing stories from her travels around the world teaching birth and breastfeeding captivated me and many others. Mary had big dreams and a vision for how to make the changes that were needed to save lives and help people have positive memories of birth. She suggested we create a committee and invite others from around the world to come together to develop a global initiative. Sadly, Mary developed late-stage cancer and could not chair the first meeting. She asked me to chair it for her. I didn't feel I was the right person, but had to overcome my fear as if Mary believed in me. I had to trust I could do it. It was a warm day as a group of strangers dedicated to creating better birth experience gathered from around the world and created their vision list for improving childbirth. I remember reading the end list. a global survey on birth and breastfeeding practices, a meeting of 20 of the major birth and breastfeeding organizations to meet in Geneva, Switzerland to launch a global initiative. I asked, who's leading this? Guess what the group replied? You are. Scared, honored, I went home. Mary passed shortly after, and I was brokenhearted. She asked me to promise her that I would continue until the model we all knew was possible was the global standard. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever had, said Margaret Mead, an American anthropologist. Well, we did it. Representatives from all around the world and the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill did the largest global survey. Volunteers wrote letters with private support and support from Childbirth Connection, Johnson & Johnson Pediatric Institute, and the World Health Organization and UNICEF co-chairing. We had our meeting in Geneva a year later. In a small formal room with tables in a U, we met. The formality of the heads of organization, each with their own agenda, made me wonder, how would we ever come together with one voice? On the second morning of our time together, with little sleep and fear our dream would fade if we could not come together, I sat down and found this red ball wrapped in plastic in front of us all. We were all being way too formal to open it, and no one knew who put it there. Our pediatric representative came in last, and she said she feared we would be too stuck up to open it. It was a clown nose. Those noses are the reason I believe the International Childbirth Initiative, and at first the International Mother-Baby Childbirth Initiative, was born. We laughed together. When moments became tense, we would put on our noses to remind each other to go lightly. Breaking down barriers, we soon came together. We did it with the help of another dear friend, Robbie Davis Floyd. She's an amazing editor. She found the words we could all agree on. 4 years ago, the International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics, named FIGO, collaborated with us on a new initiative, bringing our two organizations together, and with many global partners, we moved from 10 to 12 steps. I currently co-chair the International Childbirth Initiative. I know we're on our way to fulfilling Mary's vision and changing childbirth, saving lives, reducing disparities, and creating health equity with respectful care for all. I'm in a unique place working with leading experts, access to the latest science, and teaching doulas and working with midwives, physicians, nurses, and parents all around the world, and continuing to speak about and share all the ways to bring more intimacy to pregnancy, birth, and parenting. I want you to have access to all this information too. We have work to do, and now it's your turn to create your story, to honor and or heal the stories that have been passed down to you. It's the magic of coming together, listening and sharing our stories that creates the opportunity for change to happen. That's why I'm starting my podcast, so we can share our stories. As a doula trainer, I learn from all the stories that are shared, as all around the world, people want more from birth. Pregnancy, birth, and early parenting are both challenging times and times that are full of opportunities for joy, love, and intimacy. Too often, taboos and fears that surround childbirth strip away the sexuality and the pleasure that I know is possible. It's wonderful to co-chair a global initiative and also speak about orgasmic birth all at the same time. These are not contradictory roles. They're the same. Science is clear. Every person deserves to have a positive birth. Science supports a sexy birth. We know that the way that you are cared for, the support you have, the way people make you feel, how your providers talk to you and involve you in decision making all make a difference. It's your body, your baby, your birth, and your experience. It's not just a day. Birth is a day you will remember for the rest of your life. And your memory will be filled either with positive, powerful feelings, or sadly, for too many people, sadness, negative, disrespectful comments, lack of decision making, and regrets, and for some, trauma. Birth and postpartum are important times that shape your feelings about your body, your relationship, and the bonds you have with your baby. I'm here to guide you to have intimate discussions with leading experts in childbirth, sexuality, healing, and parenting, so you can positively prepare for birth and parenting with the intimacy and pleasure you desire and deserve. My podcast is for you if you're a doula, a birth keeper, a midwife, if you're pregnant or parenting, or are a father or partner. Together, we're coming together to bring more love, intimacy, and connection to your life. And that is what I believe will change the world. One baby, one family, one person at a time. Are you ready to take the journey? I have the map that will guide you to discover for yourself the secrets to love, intimacy, and as the title of my newest book says, sex after baby. I couldn't just stop with orgasmic birth, as I've learned firsthand that birth impacts your postpartum and intimacy for months and for many years to come. There's so many ways to bring healing, learn and expand what you thought was possible. And I'm here to be your guide as we set off on your personal journey of discovering and expanding what you thought was possible.